they rely on Russell Wilson. It almost felt like they sort of turned Russell Wilson loose too late in this game. So am I the only one thinking that, or did you feel like Seattle was way too conservative early on in this game?
Yeah, I really felt the same way too, especially when we've seen Russell Wilson have such great performances in the playoffs. He seems to be a guy that lives for the playoffs, and that's a guy at QB that you really want. But that backyard style of football, that run and gun, get it downfield or run the ball out of the pocket, or you just didn't see a whole lot of that this past weekend. And it seemed to me that Seattle just played really tight. I don't know if they felt like they were overmatched with Dallas's defense. I don't know if they felt like they couldn't keep up because they're down a few weapons too. And Carson didn't have a good game. He only had 20 yards rushing. Penny only had 29. So they weren't doing a lot out of the backfield. I mean, Lockett had that long catch, and he was the only one over 100 yards. But outside of that, I mean, they just don't have – even Baldwin only had 32 yards or something like that. So it just didn't seem like they were opening it up. They were very tight. Dallas defense was controlling the game. So although it was a close game in the end, it didn't really feel to me like Dallas was really ever out of control in that second half, Justin.
No, it really didn't. It just felt like Dallas sort of controlled that game once they got that late score. It almost felt like then Dallas took their foot off the gas. It's like they took a deep breath for 1 minute, and then Russell got him over the top real quick to lock it and got him down and got that quick touchdown. And then I guess Michael Dixon only practices punting because I don't think that man has ever kicked an onside kick in his entire life.
The end of that game was a complete embarrassment. And honestly, I put that on Pete Carroll a little bit too. That was one of the biggest coaching blunders since he had the blunder of not running Marshawn Lynch across the goal line in the Super Bowl. How in the world do you not have any guy on? Look, let's back up. Janikowski gets hurt trying to kick a long field goal, I believe, to end the first half or something near the end of the first half. So he's hurt. You don't have anybody else that can put it through the uprights. So that comes back to bite you because then at the end of the game, you apparently don't even have a secondary kicker who can top the ball off of a tee. Justin, I was joking with you on text. I'm 38 years old and fat, and I'm pretty sure that I could run up there 5 yards and hit the top of the football with my right foot and get it at least 10 yards bouncing around in the air. I'm almost positive that I could do that even in my current athletic state. So you're telling me, Pete Carroll, that there's not one other guy on that entire roster that can at least attempt to do that? No, instead, you have the guy drop kick it. It goes like 40 yards. At that point, all Dallas has to do is cover it. There's not a Seahawk in sight because he kicked it so far, and you have no timeouts left. It was a freaking joke. I'm like, as soon as he did that, I'm like, you just waved the white flag and gave up. You didn't even try.
They've been better off just to let one of their biggest offensive linemen or nose tackle or somebody just go up and, like you said, just go up and kick it as bad as possible. I kept thinking about the longest yard with Brucey. I just kept thinking about, like, you just pick like the worst guy, the most unathletic person on your team, and just turn them loose and just hope they kick it so bad that you could get it back. But I just couldn't believe that. And again, it almost seems like these teams now have to start evaluating their situation of like, what if our kicker does get hurt? What are we going to do? Because Seattle got fortunate. They went for two twice in that game, converted them both. If they had missed one or both of those, they could have been in even worse shape and not even had a chance in that game. But you talk about the injury to Janikowski. There was an injury that was much more gruesome in that game. You had Alan Hearns, whose leg basically was facing one way and his body the other. And I can't stand to look at those things. And you and my brother drive me crazy sending me those clips, trying to force me to watch it. But Eric, it seems like more and more now I have to like watch my phone for these because these type of injuries, especially in the NFL and even in the NBA, seem to be happening more and more. It felt like in the past you had like, the Robin Ventura injury, Kevin Ware from Louisville. You had these sort of higher profile moments with injuries. Now it seems like we get these 5, 6, 7 times a year, significant injuries, guys being carted off. What is going on in sports that you keep having this rash of gruesome leg injuries? Because social media it's not like social media just came around this year. It's been around long enough where all these clips go viral, but it feels like the last few years, Eric, it happens way too often.
Oh, I would agree with that. There's no doubt even in the past 2 to 3 months, there's been a handful of these. I mean, obviously last year to start the year, we had Gordon Hayward, and that was a calendar year ago. This year in the NBA, there's already been 2 ankle dislocations just like that. Then in NFL, there's been several, and there's been several compound fractures like an Alex Smith. So I don't know what's causing this. I mean, Alan Hearns, obviously it's a bad situation. You just get your foot caught underneath you, and the weight of the defender going the opposite direction is just too much for the leg to handle. And at some point, something has to give. I've actually thought the same thing about ACL tears and Achilles tears over the past couple of years. It seems like there's a lot more of those. The only thing that I can theorize, and I'm just making stuff up here on the fly, is that these guys are just bigger, faster, and stronger. And so they're putting G-forces and change in direction and different things on their bodies that the human body just can't handle. That's the only thing I can come up with. And I know certain situations, it's not just that they're changing directions or anything like that. It's that their foot, like Alan Hearns, gets caught underneath them. Same thing with Alex Smith. His foot just gets caught sideways, and the momentum of the defenders are carrying forward. And there's nothing you can really do about that. It's a freak accident. But you're right. There's a lot more of these ankle dislocations. And I mean, OBJ had one last year. You have lots of random stuff like this, and it seems to be happening more and more, especially if you count the Achilles and ACLs. It's definitely more than it used to be, and I don't know why.
And you would think about, as much as these teams just think about sports science in general, the experts that they all have on their teams, how they're forward thinking, that some of these things would be less, not more. I think in the NFL, you've hit some of the points right, where guys are just bigger, faster, stronger, and your bones really aren't going to be any stronger than they were 30 or 40 years ago. It's not like you can make your bones stronger unless these guys are taking some kind of calcium injection straight into their bone or something. That's just not going to happen. NBA is a little bit different. Is it more about guys' vertical abilities and how they are getting up and coming down, and just the pressure that they're putting on their bones and muscles and ligaments that they just can't take it?
And shoes, Justin. Shoes in the NBA have gotten lower and lower. I'm actually curious about that because there's a lot more guys are wearing cross trainers or lower ankled shoes. I was actually kind of curious about that. I mean, you're someone who played basketball your whole life. It used to be when we played basketball 20 years ago, everyone was in pretty high tops. You know, the Reebok pumps that I had in 1991, those were high tops. Now these guys, look at the new Curry 6. It's like a low top. It's like a running shoe.
Yeah.
And Curry's a guy with ankle issues. I don't understand why in basketball the trend is to have more and more lower ankled shoes, because when these guys are rolling their ankles all the time, you look at the shoes and they're not going up your ankle.
No, and you'll see the same with Harden, with Lillard. A lot of these guys are going to more of the low top shoe. Now Curry does wear, he's got the ankle braces that he wears. I'm sure these guys get taped up. But yeah, that's been the trend over the last couple of years, is more and more guys, especially the guards, you see them going with more of a low-cut shoe. It was high top, then they went to more of a three-quarter cut. Now you're just seeing more and more guys, especially guards, that just like the lower-cut shoe. So definitely something to keep an eye on, because these injuries, they're significant from the standpoint that most of the time when they happen, these guys are out anywhere from 6 to 12 months. And then you get a guy like Alex Smith that's toward the end of his career. He's gotten an infection. It's been reported. His career could be over. So I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on, see if anybody does any type of reporting on it. Maybe something we can visit in the offseason when the news slows down a little bit. So let's go to Sunday, Eric. These games offered a little more in the terms of debatable topics and things that we can talk about. So let's talk about this Chargers-Ravens game. Eric, your prediction last week was the Chargers by more than 10 points. And boy, it looked like you were going to be right on the money. This was a 23-3 game. Lamar Jackson had 2 touchdown drives in the fourth quarter, and then the Chargers sort of hung on for that 6-point win. So let me ask you this, Eric. Watching this game, we knew that the Chargers were going to be very up to speed on what the Ravens were doing offensively. They had just seen them 15 days before they played this game. They came out with a whole new strategy, a lot of times with 7 defensive backs on the field, just getting as much speed as possible. So did this win tell you more about that Chargers defense and sort of their game plan, or did this just show how limited the Ravens offense really is right now with Lamar Jackson?
I'm not totally sold on the Chargers having a great defense. To me, it was more on Lamar Jackson and whether or not he was prepared for this level of game, especially with teams coming around for the second time and seeing him. We've talked about the challenges when teams see some of these run and gun type quarterbacks like a Colin Kaepernick, like an RG3. You know, you see them a second time and they just don't have the same power that they've had before to defeat you. This time, they were ready for Lamar Jackson. They really shut him down for quite a long time. And I'm actually going to say that I was right. The Chargers were going to win by 10 plus. They just got soft in the fourth quarter and just kind of let Lamar go. And, well, he scored a couple of touchdowns on him.
Don't go to Vegas with that attitude.
Yeah, I know, right?
I would have won by more than 10.
I almost won.
You get carried out by security.
That roulette ball almost bounced on black.
In a reverse teaser that you had with the Chargers with a ton of action on them in your huge line.
No, they were just ready for Lamar, and I'm not sold on their defense being great, but it ended up being a good football game at the end. I just think that the Chargers were always going to win that game because Lamar, he needs to get a couple more seasons under his belt before he's ready for playoff football, I think.
I just think it's gadgets and gimmicks. They only take you so far. And until this offense can get to the point where teams respect Lamar Jackson's ability to throw the football, and not just when they have a big lead and they're in more of a prevent-style defense, I think there's a game plan out there now that you put a lot of speed on the field. Now, can every team mimic what the Chargers did? Do they have a front four that can get pressure? And do they have a Derwin James on the back end? No, they don't always have that. But I think there is a blueprint out there that the Ravens are going to have to adjust to, because I think you're starting to see the fact that Lamar Jackson was horrible through the first 3 quarters in this game. Eric, he was so bad through the first few series in this game. I floated the idea out to you on Twitter of, okay, if this continues and your season's on the line and you're sitting there with a quarterback who's basically made all his money off of the playoffs in Flacco, do you turn the ball over to him? And if you don't, it's going to tell me a lot about the direction of this team, what they're going to do at the head coaching position. And then you heard even on the CBS broadcast, Tony Romo brought it up about the fact that when the fourth quarter started, he would insert Joe Flacco into this game. So let me ask you, Eric, we know that Lamar made a comeback in the fourth quarter, so it sort of cancels this out. But live watching this game, did you think even coming out of the locker room for the second half or entering that fourth quarter that the Ravens should have went with Flacco, or were they right to just stick with Lamar?
Well, I think it's an organizational decision based on where you see your future. If you don't see Flacco as the future quarterback of your team, then it makes no sense to put him in even in that scenario. And the other thing I don't like about thinking that Flacco, I mean, a lot of the announcers and people that thought Flacco should go in, Lamar got you to that point. He's the one that actually brought you into the playoffs. So if he's the future of your team, you have to let him suffer through this. You have to let him take the lumps and the bumps that are required for him to get better. And it's a tough loss, sure. And there's 52 other guys that don't want to lose either. But there was also other guys on the sideline yelling at fans and saying, no, you stop booing Lamar. We're sticking with the guy that got us here. So I think as a team, they just had to make a decision of what direction their future is. And if Lamar's your future, then you don't pull him out. Yeah, I know being down by that many points, Flacco can throw the ball probably downfield better than Lamar Jackson at this point in their careers. But you put Flacco in there who hasn't played for a number of weeks. Who's to say that the result would have been any different? It may not have gone well for him either. And then Lamar Jackson comes and shows what kind of fire he does have by bringing them back with a couple of scores. So to me, I just didn't think that they needed to do it. I think you go with the guy that brought you there. You don't rock the boat, especially if Flacco's gone in the offseason.
I think this is a situation where you sort of lose a battle to win a war. I think that's the Ravens' mindset. And I put it on Twitter. I think it was just more of a question at that time of, hey, what do you think that they might do at this point? I didn't necessarily think that they should do it, but I think it would tell you a lot about, because there's been a lot of speculation and rumor out there about, would the Ravens trade Harbaugh? Does he want to be back? Is he going to sign an extension? Is he just sort of using this as a bargaining chip that he may not want to come back and he's trying to get more of a contract in line with what that Pete Carroll type money? But to me, when Harbaugh stuck with Lamar Jackson, it told me that Harbaugh wants to be back in Baltimore and he knows Lamar Jackson is his guy and he's got to show loyalty to him so he doesn't ruin that relationship. And or the front office, they had this conversation in the middle of the week to say, okay, what happens in this game if things don't go well? Because Flacco's not in our plans. And I think that the front office could have even said, nope, you stick with Lamar Jackson. No matter how bad it gets, no matter how bad the home fans get upset, Lamar's our guy. He's our future. Flacco's gone next year. We have to think that way, and we've got to be loyal to our guy. He's a first-round pick. We have him locked up for the next 4 years with that fifth-year first-round extension they got for taking him late in the first round. So I think it's what it told me, that the Ravens had no interest in getting rid of Harbaugh. They look at the coaches that are out there, and for them, it would probably be a downgrade. If you have all these teams that want your guy, I think you have to look at him and sort of assess the situation and say, okay, if all these other teams seem to be lining up for our guy, maybe we should hold on to him, because how are we going to upgrade? And that's what I saw, that Harbaugh stuck with his guy. And now you're starting to hear talks about that contract extension that could be coming for John Harbaugh in the near future. So, Eric, let's go to the game that I know you were watching the most closely of the four. maybe you should have picked with your heart last week because your Eagles ended up coming into this game. They get the late drive. They missed the 2-point conversion